You have to be careful about making a weird show or watching a weird show.
Hello, this is Greg Smalley on Pod 366, a Weird Movies podcast, joined today, as I frequently am, by the superstitious Giles Edwards.
Hello.
And by our special guest, Tom Lee Rutter, director of the visually inventive pseudo-documentary and Almanac of Oddity, The Pocket Film of Superstitions, which we will discuss in detail in the second part of this podcast. However,
Hey.
Yes, say hello to the folks at home.
Thanks for having me, guys. Thank you.
Tom has agreed to join us for our opening discussion of the week's new releases, which are all old movies, but new to home video. So many of these we have discussed before. I have placed the stills for the topics up on the board. Can everyone see them?
Yes.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Well, let us start off with this one. And as always, Giles will briefly describe this colorful still for our audience who cannot see it.
We got a cloudy pastel skyscape. We can see bits of greenery, possibly residences tucked in there, going up little branching towers into the stratosphere. And in the foreground, we have a boy in a red bodysuit that has a multicolored, very rainbow cape sort of surrounding the whole thing, and a pale jewel of some sort centered on his forehead. The boy in question looks both pleased and a bit worried, flying as he is through the air in this skyscape.
Yes, I believe he's more worried because he thinks he's plummeting to his death at this point. So not too pleased. This is, of course, a still from Arco, a movie we have discussed before when it was out theatrically. Now we discuss it or mention it again because it has shown up on VOD, video on demand, for the first time at premium pricing. So you either wait for that price to drop, wait a month or two for that price to drop, or if you want to purchase it, it will probably be the same price. And purchasing at this point is only like $5 more than renting. So those are your choices. But Giles, I believe you still haven't seen this film.
I still haven't seen this film.
Tom Lee, have you seen this film?
I can't even say I've heard of this one, so we're off on the right foot here, aren't we?
Well, I'll describe it briefly. It's a French film. I don't think it was nominated for an Oscar. I think it, however, got some buzz. It is a French science fiction film for children about a boy from the very, very distant future who travels via his rainbow-colored suit with the gem in the helmet into the past, the distant past. The distant past in question happens to be the year 2075. So it is, he time travels in the past into our future. So you get two futures there for the price of one, which is kind of the neat gimmick of the film. And it's only a little weird. It's the idea of this kid flying around spouting rainbows out of his rainbow-colored coat in order to time travel. That gives it some weird credibility. It was requested by one of our readers, which is why we reviewed it. But it's a very solid children's film with, at the end, a bit of an emotional gut punch that's almost inappropriate for kids. Hopefully it'll go a little bit over their heads. But
We like a bit of inappropriateness for kids in terms of strong content, I guess, emotional content, really. It depends how strong that is, though, I guess.
it's emotional content, so it's they lay a pretty strong guilt trip on this kid, I gotta say. So.
They got to start them young.
All right, but that's Arco for anyone who's interested in that. And going on to another animated film. We've seen this one before. We've seen this still
We've seen
before.
this, yes.
You want to
Well, we
describe it
have,
again, Giles?
yeah, we got another pastel skyscape. This one a bit hazier and much, much lower to the ground. We can see some power lines in the background. And one in the foreground, well, we've got a pretty barren parking lot. We have little men's and women's restroom stands shaped like condiment dispensers. And oh, centered here we have, well, I guess a hot dog shack. And with various beams is supporting what they claim to be the world's largest hot dog, though there is an asterisk that I can't quite see where that leads to a further explanation. And this is all done up in a very early to mid 90s 3D rendering kind of look here. For those of you who may remember the earlier popular 3D graphics, this looks like it could have been lifted straight from that, but it isn't.
It's actually, I think it's done in the same software, though. It's called Blender Animation. I believe that's old software that he deliberately used to create
Oh
this
yeah.
film. Yes, and it's called
Boys go to Jupiter.
Boys Go to Jupiter. Boys Go to Jupiter to get more stupider. Um, I
Oh
know
no, it's a story of personal growth for Billy 5000.
Billy 5000, yes. And I know Giles has seen it because we interviewed the director Julian Glander on an earlier episode. Do you want to give a very brief synopsis of the plot?
Sure, Billy 5000. He's recently turned 16. He's hustling with a Grubhub style thing, going around delivering orders and collecting monies to get toward a sort of mythical $5,000 level, which he believes will allow him to break free from the confines of his kind of drab, rundown Florida small town. In the background, looming, there is a giant juice concern that is hoping to corner this, that, and the other market. There is a space dolphin with its machinations, and differently from space, there are some strange little visitors that show up, one of whom Billy 5000 reluctantly adopts.
Yes. Yeah, so it is a weirder movie than Arco, but very lighthearted. Also
Oh,
some musical numbers, and
mhm.
it's now out on Blu-ray with a number of. There are four shorts by Julian Glander included on there. I don't know if those are available on YouTube separately or so forth, or whether they're exclusive to the disc. And there is commentary track, so some nice extras there. Tom Lee, any familiarity with this independent?
Unfortunately, not. No. Another one that just passed me by. Does it contain any heavy guilt trips on children? This
No,
one?
no, it does have some lessons learned, but it does have some emotional heft, but it was easygoing on my conscience, to be sure.
Yeah, I think it's
Wow.
more lighthearted.
So that's one for the Sunday with the wife. That one.
Right.
Yeah.
And if you have like teenagers.
Yeah, and certainly addresses issues like parenthood as well, which and
Oh.
intergenerational relationships get a little exposure there. Yeah, all around very coming of agey, fun, odd little movie here.
So we are moving sort of up the age scale. We had one for children, one more for teenagers and young adults, and now what is this still?
This blurry still, which looks like it's done in standard cathode ray uh,
It's in the
screen ratio. Well, what do we say? I think in the background it looks like there's a leather couch or something, and seated in front of that, I'm going to guess on the floor, possibly at a little table, is a young fella, close cropped hair, holding a bit of rectangle of wood there, eyes closed, mouth open, possibly injuring his tongue or possibly dropping drugs on his tongue. Should be mentioned, I guess, that he's pretty well covered in tattoo work. over all the torso we can see. But that's, not stopping him from also sporting a stylish wristwatch with a nice brown leather band. So I'm not too sure what this fella's up to, but hopefully they learn something from this endeavor.
A very poor quality picture, right? So this is from something called,
Can you hear me?
yes. Okay, if you can't hear us, I'm just going to keep talking. Um, this is from something called Your Life is on the Line, a Joe Christ Anthology. And Giles, if you can hear us, give us a thumbs up there. Okay. And I know nothing about this, so I'm going to read the product description to describe this. Outrageous, revolting, abrasive, tasteless. These are just a few of the adjectives that define the polarizing work of punk musician turned transgressive filmmaker Joe Christ, combining the gross-out provocations of early John Waters with the penurious, confrontational shock aesthetics of Nick Zedd. Christ utilized video as his primary medium to rail against the cinematic boundaries of general decency and good taste. This is presented by Saturn's Core, who has presented several of these types of compilations recently. There was the one from Mike Diana, and I think people know what this kind of thing is. Hopefully they know what kind of thing this thing is, without having any familiarity with Joe Christ himself, who, and this is the first time I've ever heard of him. Do either of you know anything more about this?
No, but he's a name I have read about. I'm a keen admirer of the lo-fi and the DIY. We sell a lot of the Saturn's Core stuff at the place I work at. It's like a film emporium called Film Treasures. We sell a lot of the Vinegar Syndrome stuff, and the floodgates have really opened with this SOV and Super 8 stuff,
Yeah.
and
And I
stuff,
suspect I've gone quiet again.
stuff beyond our wildest dreams. So I can't wait to dig into it. Really.
Have you seen stuff like the Nick Zedd or the Mike Diana?
The Richard Kern stuff. Yeah, and a couple of Nick Z bits and bobs. I think they're sort of out of circulation currently, are they? Or did they end up on Vinegar Syndrome as well? If they haven't, then they will be soon.
I think you're probably right. I have an old Nick Zedd DVD, and I think something was reissued from him recently, but I don't
They
recall.
pop up now and again in some of the groups as for, buy and sell, and I sometimes try and leap on it, but people are very quick to leap on that stuff.
I imagine so. There's a nostalgia factor for a lot of people from certain subcultures from around the 80s and 90s there.
Yeah, some heavy collectability going on.
Any thoughts, Giles?
1 second. I seem to be getting a message here, so I apologize for not muting myself because I don't know where the button is. Well, let's see. It's hang on. I'm going to come back on my lower machine anyway, so that I won't be cutting out, if that's all right.
That's all right. We'll move on and do one or two without you while you.
All right, you'll see me in a couple minutes.
Okay. It wouldn't be a proper podcast episode without some kind of technical problems. We will see Giles later, but we're going to move on to our next film, also intended for adults. And I will go ahead and describe this still not in as much detail as Giles would, but what we have here is a young man dressed as a satyr, sort of a superstitious character figure there. He has some pan flutes, little horns on his head, some makeup, and is rather unclothed, although the naughty bits are covered up in this presentation in a sylvan sort of setting. And this is a still from Pink Narcissus, which is a experimental movie from, I can probably find the date quickly. 1971, which is actually later than I thought it was. Um,
Yeah,
it's a sort of a groundbreaking DIY homoerotic experimental art house film filmed by a guy almost entirely in his own apartment where he built all these sets, and it's simply about this young hustler who is sort of enamored with his own beauty, imagining himself in various scenes through history, like in ancient Greece, in a harem, and so forth and so on. And it's made by a guy who did made gay pinup photographs before this and decided to turn that sort of aesthetic into an entire film. It's somewhat, I had heard of it a lot, just reading around in film books for a long time before it finally, just recently, came out in a restored version. I've never seen it, but I know that it has a very good reputation
yeah,
among experimental movie fans.
yeah.
What do you know about it, Tom?
I'm a big fan of this one. It's essentially like a Kenneth Anger movie without the occultism, I guess. It's very fantastic. It's just a gorgeous DIY fever dream. I mean, I think this piece, this particular photograph as well, is actually one of his. I think it was one of his magazine shoot photographs. Because obviously he had the film taken off him towards the end of the production, and it went out without his name in the end because I think he wanted his name removed because whoever gave him some completion funds then shaped it into a fashionable film. And they released it, and he wasn't happy with it, Mr. James Bidgood. So he had his name taken off it. And I think they just used some of his magazine photo shoots as promotional materials as well. I could be wrong, but I think that was the case. I'm really inspired by this film. There's an opening tracking shot which shows the moon, and it has some sort of stop motion creepy crawlies crawling all around the sort of flora and fauna, cobwebs, leaves,
Mhm.
and a butterfly as well. And those are shots that I directly lifted and knit
Oh,
for
really?
Pocket Film. Really inspirational film. So yeah, it's nice to see that this has been cleaned up because even though it's got that raw sort of 8mm look, it still looks gorgeous, you know?
I think you're probably right that that's not from the film, but is a promotional still that I grabbed off the website of the
But yeah, they use
distributor.
it for marketing for the film. But I think it's actually something they lifted themselves from his magazine days. Because I
Mm.
think that, he did a lot for those Beefcake magazines, and he put this guy in so many different fantastical scenarios. And as you say, the film was a sort of progression of that, wasn't it?
Yeah, and this looks much higher resolution than the film, even though the film has been restored.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I mean, some shots have some really nice clarity seen in this 4K resto. I mean, you sort of ask yourself sometimes, are these films even worth it? But I think the colors and the textures and the sets, you're going to get a lot more clarity out of it. Yeah, it's a really interesting film.
And it is now on Blu-ray. Of course, I have no idea what the availability of any of these are outside of the United States. It's on Blu-ray in the United States, although at the moment it's listed as out of stock on Amazon. But I
Mm.
assume you'll be able to get hold of it soon or through alternate channels, which I didn't check.
Yeah.
Giles, I know you were out. Did you have any thoughts on Pink Narcissus before we move on?
Nothing to add. Only watched the trailer and read the review, and it sounds like Mr. Rutter there had some insight. So,
Yes, yes. So, all right, let's move on and let Giles return to competently describing these stills rather than my sort of stumbling attempt to
uh,
say, "Oh, it's a guy." There's a picture of a guy. Here you go, Giles. Try your hand at this one.
all right. Well, we got a black and white still, very stylized. Definitely smacks of German expressionism, though, with a noirish kind of thing, third manish vibes going on here. This looks like an I don't know, discussion and inquisition is going on here. We see the back silhouette of a tall gentleman looking at the There's a small table with two chairs, seated at one of which looks to be a woman, blonde. Off in the corner across from her, and not at the table, but up against the wall, is a semi-reclining, portly gentleman. Looks like he's wearing a hat. All the fellas are in suits. One looks like she's in a nice, presentable outfit here. Great illumination through the upper window, which shows off that there are bars across that light source, and that is echoed by the small shadow cast by the back of the chair that's roughly in the center of the screen. So something stylish and minimalistic and ominous is happening here.
Yeah, and I believe this was filmed by the famous Roger Deakins. It is a still from The Man Who Wasn't There, from the Coen brothers. And I confess I haven't seen this. This is the earliest Coen brothers film I haven't seen. When this came out, I think in 2001, I had seen every Coen brothers movie up until this one. And this is the first one I missed, and I never ended up circling back to catch it. Although I look forward to doing so in the near future, as this is now out on 4K UHD from the Criterion collection. It has been suggested for our reader suggestion queue. It is basically I think what they describe as an existentialist noir, but a film noir story with a existentialist bent, and some of the things about Schrodinger that the Coen brothers would explore again, I think, in more depth in A Serious Man. So I'm excited to see this one. Have either of you seen it?
A long time ago. I remember it being a more subdued effort, moody, atmospheric, but ultimately one that I couldn't get on with at the time. So I think I'm due a revisit and a reappraisal, because the Coens really do me wrong. So I think now is the time.
Yeah, I saw it a while ago too, probably, I don't know, 3 or 5 years after it came out in theaters. I recall enjoying it. Certainly very stylistic. This is, an indicative sample of the general, camera work and blocking and all that. And the fact that it is told through the lens of a confession of a barber's assistant is a very Coens-esque way to go about with the story here. So yes, definitely existentialist noir is probably the fastest, most accurate way to describe it.
Okay, well, as I say, it has been released on the Criterion Collection before. This is a new restoration, a new 4K restoration. And I actually always like to ask our guests, do you have machinery capable of playing 4K UHD discs in the proper resolution?
No.
Very few do.
I have 4K. I have some very dubious 4K releases, like Dracula Sucks, the Killer Condom, one or two others that probably shouldn't be in 4K.
Those are dubious releases.
But I can't enjoy them in 4K just yet.
All right. Yeah, so it's not quite a standard yet, but I guess for high-end collectors like Giles.
Oh yeah. Well, my 4K Blu-ray player must have been one of the earliest versions of it, because it's about, I don't know, 10-ish years old now.
Mm.
Wow.
And, but more important to me than the 4K is it's hacked legally, so I can watch, multinational releases without difficulty. Whatever little programming for that. But yeah, it's got to be, it's probably standard by now if you're getting anything remotely new.
Yeah.
That's Blu-ray.
Even if I had a 4K player, I couldn't tell the difference on my television sets. So.
That's right. Your 13-inch cathode ray.
Not to mention my eyes. My eyes are terrible.
Good point. All right. Well, let's move on. 2 more episodes to discuss, things to discuss before we get to Pocket Film of Superstitions. And here is one. I'll enlarge that slightly. Giles, you want to take a shot at this?
I will take a shot. Oh, this is an interior. It looks like a sort of hangout space. Lots of random stuff everywhere. Nostalgic arcade cabinets in the background there. Little cathode ray television with knobs is playing something also. And what do we got? We got three fellas hanging around. One's got a Playboy bunny long sleeve shirt on and purple slacks. One's wearing a sort of cool shiny blue, maybe leather suit thing with a casual shirt underneath. Far right, we have the sort of skater motif of a t-shirt with a target on it over a long sleeve shirt. Center fella is holding a pair of bongo drums, and I suppose their heads, these are maybe half dog, half men. They're kind of got a lycanthropic, animalistic look. I can't quite pinpoint which predatory mammal they are part made out of, but definitely have some snout and muzzle as opposed to regular nose, shaggy hair, and big ears going on. So, although humanoid, certainly not human.
If I'm not incorrect, they're based on kangaroos, or at least two of
Okay,
them.
yep, that would, yep.
Yeah, they're very springy, aren't they?
The guy in the middle doesn't have the same ears as the other two, so he
No,
might be a
smaller
different.
kangaroo than.
I believe these are post-apocalyptic creatures from Tank Girl, which was a 1995 sort of feminist cult film set in the post-apocalypse about a girl and her tank, and one which I confess I haven't seen. It was reviewed for our site by Alex Kittle, who was the perfect person to.
Well, we got Ryan Arset is credited for the capsule.
Oh, Arset is.
Did she?
I apologize. Ryan Arset reviewed it, not.
Kittle would be a good. I'd be interested to hear her take on this.
I know she's a fan of the film, so I think I jumped to conclusions there. But I confess I haven't seen it. Have either of you two?
I found it very disappointing. I watched it probably early 2000s, and I was expecting something along the lines of what Freaked, because Freaked was around that time, I guess. Part of that crazy tie-dye psychedelic 90s where they just threw everything at the board to see what stuck, and everything seemingly stuck. But
yeah, I
it just
saw
didn't
once
work.
I saw once as well. And I got disappointed is a way to describe it, especially considering what I think it could have been, because there was definitely visual signs of the promise. The leading lady, I think, very nicely captured the pop of the titular character there, and Malcolm McDowell as corporate supervillain was a great little touch, but there just wasn't nearly enough of everything.
It was a drag. I remember it being a drag. Apart from the great production design, as Giles said, perfect casting really, but it just did not really entertain or make me laugh.
Oh, that's disappointing, but it means it's one I can put further down my 2C queue, I guess.
Just revisit Freaked, I guess.
Or you could read the source material. Tank Girl is based on a comic series, which I imagine had a liveliness that the movie adaptation doesn't.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's Tank Girl. It's now out on 4K UHD. Also, nothing new besides the new format, I don't believe. And we have one more to discuss. I've chosen a rather tame still from this movie, from the very gory ones I had the option of. But Giles, would you like to describe this tame and not at all representative still?
Sure. This is an exterior scene. Two young fellas. I'm going to guess they may well be on a bench in front of an open dumpster, which is looming over their shoulders there. Sort of curly-haired fellow with glasses next to a shaggy blonde fellow with some, well, I guess the beginnings of a goatee thing going on. Blonde fellow holding a bunch of flowers, and they're sharing a magazine, a special interest magazine, looking on with both Well, let's see. Glasses fella seems very amused. Shaggy blonde looks a bit disturbed. So whatever article they're reading in Modern Hermaphrodite is getting mixed reactions.
And it might be the cover story, Famous Hermaphrodites, Eleanor Roosevelt, Adolf Hitler, and more. So I like the design, the sense of detail that goes into this cover. The modern has a little a male symbol, and the hermaphrodite part has a little female symbol.
Yeah, the two O's each cover. Yeah, that's
They put a lot of thought into this prop that's probably only on screen for a couple of seconds in Terror Firmer, the movie from Trauma, comedy about making a movie, and very gory, typically tasteless. And I will say it is mostly notable to me for having a lot of the same cast as Romeo and Juliet, which I think was the movie that immediately followed it or immediately preceded it, one or the other. And of course is my favorite trauma movie, as I think people who follow the site will know. I wasn't as fond of Terra Firma, but it's pretty firmly in the trauma aesthetic. If you think of a trauma movie, this is what you're going to get. This is pretty representative. Bad taste, lots of gore, very goofy jokes, some clever jokes, some just completely juvenile jokes, all mixed together, and crazy costuming and so forth. Have either of you seen it and have thoughts on it?
I'm a complete trauma child, so yeah. Much like yourself, though, I wasn't as enamored with this one, as even though it does deliver on every level as a trauma film should. I was more of a fan of Tromeo and Citizen Toxie, which bookended this one, I think. But it's also a very honest portrayal of life on a film set, I'd say.
Lots of serial killers going after you in the films. I'm sorry to hear that, Tom.
Yeah.
I think I've only seen one trauma movie, and it's Romeo and Juliet from '96. So I so far I've learned I'm pretty okay with that.
Romeo and Juliet is a little bit of an outlier. I think it's their highest quality movie. I think James Gunn worked on it, and I think his influence is very well seen. Although he doesn't take it outside of the normal trauma aesthetic, but I think he kind of his presence and his writing and so forth.
The emotional core. It has an
it?
emotional core. It has an emotional core that shines through, I think.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Well, that's Terror Firmer, which is also on 4K UHD, as Troma is re-releasing all their stuff in that format. And in fact, I'm not sure they have much more left to release in that format, other than the very early stuff, which might not benefit from a 4K UHD. The material might not be good enough to.
When did that ever stop them?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Or anyone.
But there you go. That's Terra Firma, and that ends all our discussion of the weekly releases. So we can come back, of course, for you, No Time Will Pass, and devote all of our remaining time to talking about the week's other new release. So, although I think it's been out for more than a week, the Pocket Film of Superstitions. I keep mispronouncing it and saying proper pocket book or pocket guide. Pocket
Everybody
film.
does.
But we will.
You're not the only one.
We'll talk about that in detail when we return. As I said, we'll run to the restroom, but no time will pass for you guys. So see you then. Bye. Hello, and we are back with Tom Lee Rutter now to talk in depth about Pocket Film of Superstitions, which, as I said up front, is a pseudo-documentary. It is a documentary, but with acting in it, and all the material in it is pretty factual about superstitions. Maybe all. It tells you a lot of things you wouldn't have known, and it is largely silent and done in a silent film aesthetic, although there is some talking and constant narration, which is a topic we will get into. But I think when I saw this film, sometimes you get little links submitted to you from people at random, uh, and you're like, well, you got to keep your expectations low. But when I checked this out, I was very pleasantly surprised with what you achieved with this film. And it's a great idea for a film that can be achieved on a low budget. I think one of the first things that I thought about when I saw this film is this makes me wonder what would Haxan be like if it was a genre of film rather than a single film? Um, I think I'm not wrong in saying that there's a Haxan influence on this film. Would you correct me if I'm wrong, or just say that I'm right?
And they say a lot of filmmakers are trying to just remake one film, and I'm trying to remake Haxan with every film I make, eventually. Before that came a film called Bella and the Witch Elm, was about a local piece of folklore. That in itself was my remake of Hexen. And I thought, how can I take this even further and add in sort of Dadaist humor, Python-esque sort of humor. So yeah, it's another another stab at remaking Hexen, because Hexen to me is one of the most remarkable films ever made. I'm still actually in shock that that film exists. You know,
Well, I
it's
agree.
just
It's amazing. It's just and the idea of the horror documentary. It wasn't even after he made it way back in the 20s. It wasn't nobody even tried to do it again. It was so original. So
yeah, and the fact that it survived intact as well, considering how many other films got buried and cut to ribbons for a lot less. And yet here it is intact. I mean, there's several versions intact and pristine. It's a gorgeous, diabolical film. I don't think with cinema has come much further since, to be honest, because he completely ripped up the rule book before the rule book was finished, really.
yeah.
So I love hybrid films like that take a documentarian approach and then take complete flight to fantasy, and that was really appealing. Um, and also that coupled with the fact that I had no money, I like the fact that I could just take a bunch of actors, film something with them for the day, wave the actors off, and then think, well, I can connect this to another unrelated piece with a narrator, and then I can sort of go back to work, save up some more money, and I wouldn't have to worry about the actors coming back and not and having a haircut and stuff like this. So that whole sort of approach to filmmaking was also very appealing and also a necessity, you know.
Okay, Giles, do you have a question?
Well, yeah, yes, I do. That's what we're here for. Yeah, you're talking about obviously Haxan was motivation here, and something I've recently enjoyed asking, shall we say, small budget filmmakers like yourself. There's a point where you have these ideas you're exploring, and then there's this point where you've got this final thing, this complete project. I wonder if you might talk about how you tipped from thinking about doing something like this on, the scale of a feature length and actually got started.
I think I've always been sort of a little bit sort of fidgety, where if something's on paper for too long, then I start losing that sort of that energy to sort of see it through. In a way, it's almost like you're exercising through ideas. So if something's on paper for too long, then it's sort of exercised in a way. Whereas what you have to do sometimes is you just go out and film something. So what we did was I had a burning desire to film a sequence, which was actually the sequence involving the changeling.
Mm.
And because I felt okay, let's get this scene down because it's a very strong scene in my mind, and then we'll worry about the film around it afterwards, and then you've got some sort of base material to sort of start working with. So it was a case of, okay, go out and film a scene. Don't worry about what it leads to or how it gets there. Just go and film that, and then you can start building from there. And then obviously, what I would also do is then list down all the superstitions I'd like to include, because I come from a sort of very sort of salt of the earth background in the West Midlands of the UK, in the Black Country, which is one of the oldest surviving strands of Old English, funnily enough, and they're a very superstitious bunch. I always tell audiences about my nan. On the one hand, she'd sort of bring me back down to earth with a bit of a slap around the face, saying, "Don't be so silly about things." And then she'd tell me about the ghosts that she'd commune with. And I love that sort of that mixture of a hot, like real world sort of grounding, and then this sort of complete belief in the supernatural, which is something that I never sort of experienced myself, but I was brought up to just believe that that should be an acceptable realm as much as anything else. Um, so it was always in my mind to do something like this and sort of bring an almanac to life was the next natural logical step, because I was able to explore so many different fantastical scenes, and not worry about exactly how they were going to fit together at that point. Somewhere along the line, it's been a very sort of strange approach to filmmaking, because there was never really a full script. It was just vignette, and then sometimes I'd plug in a shoot date and then write the script the weekend before, and then I would just look at my list of superstitions, thinking, okay, so that should really lead into this, or that should lead into this, because then you start thinking of superstition and what sort of emotions that scene could start to project, whether something would be played straight, whether something would be silly, whether something would be quieter, whether something would be louder, and then you have to sort of start juggling those to think, okay, if we're going to sort of deliver this to an audience, you've got to throw a lot at them, but you got to make sure you feed them properly. And it was a very big experiment in that regard, and I didn't know if it would work until we got to the end. So yeah, yeah. And the short answer is basically I just had to start filming something, and then eventually it started taking shape. And then halfway through, I realized, oh, okay, I need to start writing the narration for this now. So whilst I was editing sequences and putting them on a timeline, there were gaps, and there was no sort of real sort of body to it. And then I recorded the narrator, and then I fit him underneath, and then it started having a body.
So, boy, you just answered a bunch of questions I already had. You took them off. But I do think that something we have to talk about in detail is what you ended with, which is the narrator, because the narrator is very crucial to this movie, and it is someone who I was not familiar with, but I'm excited to learn more about your narrator, who goes by the name the Shend.
The
What
Shend, he's a
he's the
living legend. Yeah.
absolute perfect voice for this. I can't really describe his voice, but he does an absolutely
Let's
fantastic.
call it a toppy voice.
Okay.
Let's call it a
Yeah, I
toppy
believe
voice.
he defines his tone there. Yeah.
So what can you tell us about the Shend?
The Shend is a bit of a post-punk legend. He formed a band in the late 70s called the Cravats with his bandmates from Worcestershire, which is where I am right now. So the town pretty much next to where I live. Only they sort of ended up going to London. They got released by Crass Records. So they put out some really good records. The philosophy of their music was Dadaist punk, so it was very jazzy, very silly, very much taking their cues from Viv Stanshall and the Bonzo Dog Doodah band,
Mm.
but bringing that into into the punk arena, a la 1979 onwards. But because they went to London, the Shend was able to get an equity card, because back then, if you were in a band, you could get an equity card. Whereas if you were in Amdram Theatre, or you were a jobbing actor with not many credits under your belt, you would even struggle to get an equity card. But because the Shen was in a band, he got himself an equity card and started acting. And so I went to see the Cravats in a reformed lineup in one of the local towns, and I absolutely loved seeing him perform. It was incredible. And I sort of then started reading up on him a little bit because I had him in mind. Thought, okay, this guy, and then I realised he'd been in every sitcom known to man that I grew up watching. Like, if you watch episodes of Knowing Me, Knowing You with Alan Partridge, he's there. If you watch episodes of Red Dwarf, he's there.
Who's he in Red Dwarf?
He's in series 8, in particular the Cassandra episode. He's Warden Not in that. He's in pretty much everything that I was watching, throughout the 90s. So he's like this omnipresent guy, but he also has a very silly, Dadaist sense of humor. And also made little videos where he just do silly little things and stuff like just basically an all-rounder. They ended up becoming the Cravats ended up becoming a band called The Very Things throughout the 80s, and they were famous for a song called The Bushes Scream While My Daddy Prunes, which is an incredible piece of music, post-punk sort of a la Monster Mash, a la Viv Stanshall. And we bonded on that sort of, the influences, in particular, Viv Stanshall. And one of the influences of this film was the film version of Sir Henry at Rawlinson End. I don't know if you've both seen that one. So yeah, the look of the film does take its cues from that, and it was just bringing that punk slash Dadaist energy to proceedings, and it was just felt like this the perfect fit. And we were meant to record in person, but then COVID happened, so I sort of bought him a microphone because it turns out he lives down in Brighton. I bought him a microphone, just sent him a microphone, and sent him loads of notes. He just had a stab at it all in one night, really. And I think I gave him like a page of retakes, and that was it. And then I had it, and it was I just couldn't ask for anything better, really. But yeah, the Shend, it's hard to put your finger on the Shend because he's done everything. He's worked with everyone, and it is just exactly that sort of that punk DIY sort of energy that I needed to bring to the film to really sort of just give it that little cherry on top of the cake.
Okay, Giles.
Oh yeah, I guess well, having talked about the Shend, I also like to learn how filmmakers like yourself for projects like this, your cast, you got a whole, you got a big crew of people in front of the camera there. I imagine you probably had a small crew behind the camera, maybe, you and a handful of others. But
Yeah,
how
just
do you
me.
go about collecting these people willing to bring your superstition vision to life here?
Okay, so we've got a real sort of. I like to call this film a sort of scrapbook of friends because it is just like a big parade of lovely faces amid loads of smoke and mirrors, really. Um, a lot of the people you'll see on screen are fellow um, British indie filmmakers, really. In particular, there's a scene at the end with the shrink. Um, every person in that scene is a filmmaker themselves. In fact, the shrink he grew up with the Shend. He went to see the Cravat's first gig at a high school. And they grew up, pretty much together. They knew each other. They knew each other. So but he'd made his own films, Pablo, and John, who was having his head looked at, he makes his own feature films. He's shooting one right now. And then there's local friends, there's people who you sort of just cajole into putting in a scene because they're available on the day or they've just got the right look or something like this. And then you sort of look at it and you think, okay, so I can make this movie and it'll be a case of loads of really cool people that I know in it. But can we possibly aim a little bit higher and maybe get a couple of faces in there, who are sort of known. And because it was a sort of vignette based production, it is that law of okay, you only need them for a day. You can get them in for a couple of hours, wave them off, and then you've got potentially got a name in your scene. So I approached a couple of scream queens, veteran scream queens, namely Caroline Munro, um, who, I guess we all love Caroline Munro, and we all have a film that we remember watching Caroline Munro in. But she's just the nicest person you can imagine. In fact, the devil who we were seeing, right, Gary Baxter, who plays the devil, he connected me with Caroline Munro. I spoke to Caroline's manager, Jane, and we basically negotiated. She told me how much Caroline is for the day, and then I asked her how much she was for an hour. But so we managed to get a good deal and got Caroline essentially for the day. And then what we'd do is we'd get Caroline into this green screen studio in a college, which was facilitated to us by some other filmmaker friends, Michael New of Feisty Films, and they said you can have this college green screen studio on the caveat that some of the students come and help out, which was great because they learned a lot, and Caroline loved seeing the students make a fuss of her and stuff like this. And we shot Caroline's cutaways, and then the rest of the witch's Sabbath scene, of which Caroline's the high priestess of, I shot like 2 years later because, well, COVID and just the general freedom of shooting without sound, black and white, and all that sort of stuff. You can really sort of hide the seams of a lot of these inconsistencies or changing scenery and stuff like that. But yeah, so Caroline, then I could walk away saying Caroline Munro is in my movie, even though I got her for a day. But you could, but because it's a vignette-based film, you can still use her in all the promotional materials and not really lie to people because, yeah, she is in the film like everyone else in the film. They all have a sort of equal screen time. So yeah, a real mixture of friends and of differing levels of professionalism, I guess you can say, and then sort of saving up your pocket money to, go that a little bit further and get someone like Caroline Munro in there. Lynn Lowry, on the other hand, Lynn Lowry is very smart in that Lynn Lowry will work her way around the whole indie filmmaking network, send them a DM and say, I'd love to work with you sometime. And then fanboys like me go crazy saying, Lynn Lowry wants to work with me. And then obviously we then negotiate. And before you know it, Lynn Lowry's in my film as well, So I was quite proud that these ladies could head up this production, which is essentially a DIY shoot as and when you can sort of effort over 5 years in the end, partially due to COVID, partially due to fluctuating motivation levels and whenever you can get the money, that sort of thing. But the anxiety was never there to sort of finish it. Only possibly the anxiety of it never getting finished because you'd constantly think, well, if we put this superstition in, we must put this superstition in, and you have to draw the line somewhere.
I like how that facility said, "Yeah, we'll give you a place to film, but only if you let us give you helpers too." That's
I know you can't ask for anything more there, can you? Really? I mean, we were hiring out loads of local museums because obviously over here we've got the National Trust, which look after lots of beautiful old buildings that are kept and restored. But the National Trust are used to dealing with actual big production companies, So I learned very quickly that I can't really go to the National Trust. So what I'd do is go to loads of local museums. I mean, the actual scene at the end with the shrink's office was filmed at the birthplace of Gustav Holst. And which supposedly had the piano downstairs, which he composed the planets on. I don't know how true that is, but it was the Regency room of Gustav Holst's birthplace. But again, that's because that was an independent run museum. We could make a deal. And the haunted house sequence, because I wanted to essentially condense, something like The Woman in Black into 3 minutes. That was a house that I'd visit as a child in the local park, which just happens to be a council-run free museum, And in Kidderminster, where I live, it's home of the Severn Valley Railway. Now, on the train tracks of the Severn Valley Railway is there's a particular track that leads to a tunnel which goes to Bewdley. I used to work next door to that, so I'd look at it every day. But that is the track where they shot the ghost story at Ghost Story for Christmas of Charles Dickens' The Signalman. So with Denholm Elliott, and obviously I'm hugely inspired by those. So it felt like a sort of spiritual sort of passing the torch to put that little bit of track in the film.
You know, I would be remiss. This isn't a very important question, but I think uh, certain people would be upset if I didn't discuss it and ask about it. And the question is something a superstition I had never heard of before. Certainly, I'm almost certain it's exclusively British and probably exclusive to a small region of Britain. I wouldn't be surprised, but I have to ask about Devil's Nutting Day and whether that has the same double meaning to you as it does to Americans.
It definitely has the same double meaning to us, and I was quite happy to let people come to that sort of mindset because, as per the cheekiness of the film, I do believe it is a British superstition. If you go nut picking on a certain day in September, you will likely find the devil out picking his nuts too. And and in the town that I live in, the more harsh reality of that sort of analogy is possibly more true. But I was luckily there was a bridle way near where I live, which was a um, hazelnut grove, and we were able to film a legit hazelnut grove. Only the squirrels had got to all the nuts before we had. So if you look carefully in that scene, a lot of the nuts were hollowed out because the squirrels had already got to them. But yeah, yeah, everyone laughs when we talk about Devil's Nutting Day for that very same exact reason and conclusion that you came to, Gregory.
All right, Giles, ask a more substantial question.
Oh, of course, yeah. Well, obviously there's a very, very earthiness to this because you're obviously trying to tap into folk history as opposed to a grander sort of history. You mentioned your list of superstitions. Maybe you can talk a little bit about how you axed certain, from the final product, what made you choose others, and if there are a few you really wish you could have included if, circumstances had gone differently.
So we had a couple in mind. One of them was about amulets and talismans, because that's a whole breadth in itself. However, um, the talisman side of things, I found had a lot more sort of cultural preciousness attached to them, and I didn't want to be seen to be appropriating or trivializing something which meant a lot to certain marginalized cultures. In fact, I read that on plantations, amulets were a big thing in order to put hexes on sort of slave masters and stuff like this. And there would have been no way for me to tackle that without it being a bit sensitive. And the tone of the film, I thought it would have probably knocked it off its axis a little bit. So I had to be respectful there and just sort of say, well, because I was going to do one about the Eye of Hamza, the Hand of Hamza as well, um, as per what you would see in Morocco. But again, I feel like it'd be a case of including something without maybe representing it the best or being the best person to represent that, I guess. So I chose to leave that out. There was also the stepping on the cracks, for instance. There was racial connotations towards a rhyme involving that. And I decided to remove that and just make it a little bit more just trivial and silly. And then I quickly diverted to a fairy gag. Um, but I also wanted to include stepping on cracks because it's something that I actively avoid doing as well. So, it was just about swerving it and just handling it with the right amount of attention without going down dark paths, I guess. And there was also one on Young Frau, which was a spirit of pestilence which swept round during the plague and would come and collect the souls of people dying of the plague. But that became to me another version of a ghost, another spirit, and I sort of had a top heavy piece on ghosts, so there's no point doing another type of spirit, if you know what I mean. Because it's a mixture of more esoteric superstitions. Like there's one that is more, there's one that's more sort of based from the Midlands, and that was the baking of the dumb cake.
Ah.
And now a lot of people, when they see the film, will point that out as one that they didn't know about. That's because that was a more regional one.
I
Whereas
should
then
have
you got,
pointed that out.
well, yeah, and then you got ones of witches and ghosts, which is a lot more broader, but no less sort of relevant and needed to be sort of, kind of put up against the more esoteric ones with the broader strokes, really. I'm a bit annoyed that I missed out like crows and ravens because there's a
Uh,
running gag with birds. And at some point, the crow and the raven was going to go in there, especially around the bit with the graveyard. But because the Swift had already flew into it, I felt that okay, well, it's less obvious, but we go with the Swift, and then I'll come back to the crows and the ravens at some point later on, which I never did. But but
There,
yeah, I got this book. I'm sorry, I got this Encyclopedia of Superstitions from Ian Benson, and it's huge. And I really could have gone on forever, which is why at the end I had the Shen say, you know, there's only so many we can talk about because we'd be here all day.
hmm.
so I do want to point out that we're happy to talk about how the film was made, but you're also here because you want to promote the film, and so we're going to talk about this limited edition Blu-ray that you've put out, if you will, and I put up the still of it. So, what can you tell us about this? And since this is a limited edition, is there going to be future plans for the film after this limited edition?
Yep, there'll be a standard edition, and then we'll possibly look at maybe getting it out in other territories. But with the standard edition to follow, we'll look to stock that in, US emporiums because there's plenty out there that love stocking all the esoteric stuff like Diabolic and whatnot.
Mhm.
But for now, we've got this limited edition Blu-ray. On it, you will find my short films, the aforementioned Bella in the Witch Elm, and one that has not been seen by many called Dr. Baldwin Cross Beyond the Void. That's more of a sort of mockumentary about the sort of type of hauntological supernatural TV show you would have found in the 80s and from the 90s that you would sort of find on YouTube. Someone would have uploaded an old VHS recording of it. I thought let's play around with these sort of styles and make a film about an occultist who died and promised everyone he'd come back, send a message back from the void. So those are on there as well. I'm glad to say on the back of the slipcase, I'll talk as I show it, but there's on the slipcase you've got a picture of Caroline Munro, um, which is
See if we
great
can get
because
that here.
a lot of fans then take these for Caroline to sign. But then at the top there, you'll see there's a quote from Giles's review
Oh,
of
Oh,
there you go, 366 movies, because that is a fantastic quote, and that is essentially what this film is. It's a celebration of the weirdness that is man. It's an anthropological study, albeit a silly one. The pocket film of superstition never bores, often tickles, and is always very, very British. Maybe best viewed as an anthropological study, a silly anthropological study. I thought that was perfect. So that had to go right at the top of this
thank you,
slip
Ken.
page. Yeah. So thank you for that. I really, and it comes with art cards, a set of three double-sided art cards, which I sort of mocked up as sort of faux lobby cards, and it's not a BDR, it's a proper factory press disc. I got it rated by the BBFC, which, as you may be aware, in Britain is what you have to do if you're going to put a Blu-ray out, but it's not cheap. We're not the land of the free like over there where we can just release something unrated.
Yeah, yeah.
I will point
But
out in regards to the rating, that 15 rating is probably only for one scene, scene with male frontal nudity. If that scene had not been in there, it would probably be, what we
well,
would
you know
consider.
what? That was my fault exactly. Only when I got the report back, the BBFC denoted strong violence.
Oh,
which took me by surprise a little bit. I was expecting a 12, but I
Yeah.
think it might have been something to do with the throat slitting during the witch's Sabbath, maybe. I don't know, but you live and learn. But yes, there is a scene of full foot. I've had people say, you know what, this is a film I wouldn't mind showing my child, apart from that one scene. So, um, I'm sorry, I guess.
Okay, yeah. I guess yeah, it's been a little bit since I've seen the movie, but I glossed that over. But of course, it may be worth mentioning that when I was just 4 years old, I was being babysat by my two aunts who decided that night to watch Monty Python's The Meaning of Life while watching over me. And so, yeah, I guess pretty much everything since then, it's like, what's the problem here?
Yeah, yeah. I remember being very disturbed by that film because I was brought up to what, with Life of Brian and Holy Grail. So when it finally came to watching The Meaning of Life, I don't think I was ready for how cynical that film is. And it's one of those when you grow older, you realize actually that might be the best one.
I think it has the best moments. Yeah, I was scarred. I'm still find ultraviolence no problem, but the creosote scene, it's like if there's anything I'm bad at, handling in movies, it's vomiting because of that.
It's a masterpiece. But yeah, that type of juxtaposition, I guess, of quaintness with the British sense of what Roger Ebert called the one-upmanship of trying to just wrong out everybody. It's a sort of sensibility that I wanted to bring to this, but without that sort of the sort of element of transgression, because I feel like on the scene of which I sort of operate at the moment, there's a lot of amongst indie horror filmmakers. There's a lot of need for horror comedy. There's a lot of need for gore. There's a lot of need for trying to just push the envelope, I guess, and a lot of need for just repeating sort of stuff that you've seen before, really. So I felt like the new transgression was to be really quaint and really quite pretty and make films with fairies in it and stuff like that. Because my mom loved flower fairies when we were, growing up. She'd always be drawing and had the little flower fairy books. So I realised the scene like that for taking my cues from the Cottingley fairies and stuff like that, rather than other horror films, I guess.
Yeah.
Apart from Haxan.
We do have about 5 minutes left, so let me make sure we get in our final two questions. We may have time for more depending on how long these answers take, but we always feel a responsibility to ask a filmmaker. We're talking about the film you've just made, but what is coming next? What do you have on the horizon?
So we're planning a film about undines, so water elementals. So it's going to have the same sort of early cinema vibes, but I'm going to open it out more dynamically because when you make indie films like this, I feel like I've sort of hit the ceiling in terms of making a film at this level. It's very DIY, so now I've got to sort of open it out more dynamically. I've got a DOP on board. We've written a very complex script. It's going to take elements of the early Fantasia of something that you'd see pictures of with films that are lost, in particular Undines on a beach, frolicking on the rocks. So yeah, it's a film about water elementals who kind of come to land, find their earthbound loves, and have nothing but stress, depression, anxiety to deal with, and they all share a connection of dreaming about houses because obviously these water elementals are now on land. They're now sort of trapped in these constructs that are just four walls. So they all each have anxiety dreams about different houses. Because I'm really fascinated about recurring dreams of houses that you're sort of semi-aware of that suddenly have new corridors and stuff like this. And obviously that can mean growth. Or there's one where a lady I knew had a recurring dream about her husband moving into a dilapidated haunted house, and she didn't like it, but the rest of the family were going along with it. And I found that very fascinating. And it could mean so many different things and represent so many different anxieties. So it's a film about that, but instead of making them just people, I thought I'd make them water elementals that came to land and now have anxiety dreams about houses.
When I think of a house, I always think of a house as a symbol for the human mind with the
Yeah.
separate rooms.
Well, House of Usher.
Yeah.
You know, you got the cracks. With Viv Stanshall did the song, didn't he? The cracks are showing. It's about the cracks that's going to ultimately separate the two parties, the two ushers. It could mean so many different parts of the mental well-being and state of mind.
Okay. Giles.
Yes. Well, you gave a hint to the part of this answer, but one question we like to ask all of our interviewees is, what's your hometown, and can you recommend a restaurant there?
I guess it'd have to be China Lodge. The best restaurant we had here in Kidderminster was called La Opera. It was a great Italian with a great Italian chef, but then he got homesick and went back to Italy, and then it all just fell to ruin. So now we have China Lodge. It's very slim pickings, but it's a good Chinese meal.
And that's in Kidderminster, you said?
That's Kidderminster in Worcestershire. Yeah, Worcestershire. So you got the West Midlands, then you got Worcestershire, then you got Wales. So yeah, I'm sort of in between the West Midlands and Worcestershire here. Yeah, classed as Worcestershire, but we're essentially in the West Midlands.
Mm.
And I guess for our American listeners and viewers, I did a little small amount of research during this. West Midlands, just imagine England proper, south of Scotland, north of the Channel. It's really right in the middle of the country.
If people don't understand, just say Birmingham.
Oh, okay.
How'd they come up with that name anyway? So I guess that about does it for us. Thank you so much for being on, Tom Lee Rutter. I really recommend this movie. I hope it becomes more available to Americans to see in the future. Especially Haxan fans are really going to jive this, and people who like British humor that can be very sly and subtle a lot of the time, and then suddenly just go really broad. So give you a big belly laugh. So it's very effective in that regard. But thank you for being here, and we are going to be off. We may have a guest next week, but I'm not ready to announce them yet because they're not finalized. If not, we'll be back to discuss the weekly releases. And bye, everybody. Bye-bye.
Yeah, great. Thanks again.
Thanks for having us, guys.
Yeah, it was good to chat.
Okay.
Thanks for getting the title right as well.
Weird. Yeah, I guess that is the word for it. Weird.